Greg is recording the meeting and running the technology, so couldn't do that without him. Pamela Hazard is here, and other board members who will be showing up include our Vice Chair, Cherie Egbert, Treasurer Eric Berg, Secretary, oh, that's Pamela. Pamela's the Secretary, and the Co-Secretary, David Farron. Also, members at large, Christine Burke, John Jones, and Arlene Martinez.
And Christine is here.
And Christine is here. Okay, so I can't even see all the faces who are here. Greetings, everybody. And so just a couple of comments. You can ask questions in the chat, preferably kind of at the end of presentations. And we'll try to get to them all. But again, we do have a lot of folks here, so we'll do our best. As always, please be respectful. It's important to us to treat everyone with respect. And cut me a little slack since this is my first time running the meeting in a while. So I see our first item. So we're going to have a police report. Then we'll have a report on the historic resources survey. Then we'll have some items on how to electrify your home. And then we'll have a couple of our Midtown reports. And at the end of the meeting, there'll be an opportunity for some announcements. So I see that from the police department, it looks like Patrick Furlong is here with Commander Caliento. Do you want to introduce him and the presentation, or how do you want to handle this?
Yeah, sure. Let me just introduce him really quickly. Hi, everybody. Ted Caliento, Ventura Police. One of the things we wanted to do was showcase all the people that work in the police department that aren't police officers that do all the great support stuff. So I'm going to introduce you our CIT officer, Patrick Furlong, and he's going to go ahead and explain what he does for our community. So thank you guys and have a great night.
Okay, thank you. So, hi, my name is Patrick Furlong. I'm a criminal investigative technician. I started working for the Ventura Police Department in 2010 as a police cadet. I can actually thank the downtown parking meters as giving me a foot in the door. So I know everyone hates them, but I mean, it got me where I am right now. So from there, I then moved on to a position as a police services officer, which is another non-sworn civilian position assigned to our crime analysis unit, dealing with non-critical missing persons, sex offender registration, and producing information for the community as in terms of crime trends, but also for our patrol officers and for our command staff. So right now, this position as a criminal investigative technician began around late 2018, early 2019, and I've been with the program since its inception. My position is paid for through the sales tax increase. And along with myself, there are 5 other criminal investigative technicians that work under the street crimes unit, which is under the umbrella of our investigative division. So on a daily basis, we'll be dispatched to calls for service involving thefts, vandalisms, burglaries, fraud investigations, violation of restraining orders, essentially property crimes that don't have a suspect on scene. But if we're able to establish a suspect that was involved, we essentially work our investigation up to then ghostwrite a warrant for an officer or detective to sign off on, so that we provide our officers more opportunity to deal with in-progress crimes. So we're definitely a growing resource. Like I said, when I was hired on with the program, there was only 3 of us, and now we're up to 6. We had a recent hire start within the last 2 weeks, and another hire start up within the last 2 months. And we bring a combined resource of not only with myself being a former police services officer, we have a former dispatcher, we have a former sergeant from the U.S. Secret Service, we have a former records technician from the Santa Barbara Police Department, and also a former employee that worked as a contractor with naval base, with the naval base, Ventura County. So we bring a variety of skills and techniques to assist not only our patrol officers, but our detective division from sex offender registration compliance, missing persons follow-up, cell phone downloads, what's called Celebrite. So collecting information from confiscated cell phones, to aiding detectives with gun violence restraining orders. And it's still a growing program. So we're working within the needs of the department to give our officers and detectives more time for in-progress crimes.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Let's see, we have a question. I'm not sure this is a question you can answer, but we'll give it a try here. I recently had, this is from Dennis Belt.
Okay.
I recently had an unnerving experience on the bike path between Channel Drive and Harbor Boulevard. I was confronted twice by vagrants in an area where there's no escape. Does VPD patrol this area?
So where was the area again? The bike path
Between Channel Drive and Harbor Boulevard. I think he's referring to, there's a bike path that's, not, that goes straight across the fields, not along a road.
Right. So potentially, the Ventura Police Department also has the patrol task force. So it's 4 officers, 2 corporals, and a sergeant that are assigned to deal with quality of life issues with the homeless population. So it's almost the size of its own patrol team that will deal specifically with quality of life and homeless issues. So addressing these areas of concern, businesses that are having problems with individuals sleeping on their property, and then also working with community partners to have family reunification opportunities. So if the individual is willing, we can have them reconnected, reunified with family members or treatment program to kind of, rather than arrest our way out of the issue, get them connected with more better resources to address the issue in a long-term fashion. But if something like that's happening, please feel free to call our dispatch center, our non-emergency number of the 805-650-8010, or since the city is broken up into different beats, you can actually contact the beat coordinators, and that email is monitored by normally 2 sergeants and a commander. So what they can actually do is assign a patrol officer to go to those areas to address those issues directly to try and remedy the problem.
Okay,
well, that's not necessarily something that I'm involved with because we're in a non-sworn civilian capacity. We're unarmed. We do have obviously our radios and body-worn cameras, but we don't make direct contact with individuals or suspects involved in crimes. We were essentially brought on to give officers more of time to deal with those in-progress crimes or those in-progress concerns.
Well, thank you. I think you gave a very good answer for someone who's not directly involved. So maybe you could tell us what's one of the interesting cases that you've been involved in recently?
Kind of hard to narrow down.
I didn't say the most interesting. While you're thinking, here's another comment. The Arundel Barranca bike path is not patrolled. I've ridden it for 30 years and it can be pretty isolated. That's from Kate Falconer.
Okay. And I think that's one of the issues is that the patrol task force they also do occasionally have bike patrols, but like with anything else, we have to deal with issues on a priority basis. If there aren't the officers available to routinely patrol areas of concern, and it just happens, but if we don't receive the calls into our dispatch center, we don't know that it's a problem area. So what our crime analysis unit and our dispatch center created, what they're called our focus patrols or focus areas. So issues like that, specific bike trails, park areas that might have problems with graffiti, with homeless activity, with property crime related issues. Essentially, what the dispatch center will do will create a call for service and have officers dispatched to those areas and not only be a presence in those areas to deter the crime, but make proactive enforcement. So subject stops, traffic stops, seeing if anyone's on probation or parole, enforcing their terms, and being a direct present in those areas to try and remedy the issue.
Okay, well, thank you. It's really great to get sort of a behind the scenes look at some of the other things that are going on with the police department. And we really appreciate your being here.
Yeah, not a problem. Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns?
I don't see any. So thanks again.
Yeah, not a problem.
Okay, so next up, we have a presentation on the Historic Resources Survey. And this is by two folks from Historic Resources Group, who is working on the survey. So I know there's a lot of interest in Midtown in our historic buildings. And so we're really happy to have folks here to talk about this. So we have Kari Fowler and someplace I see her.
That's me here.
That's okay. There's Kari and Sian Wilsnip. Do I pronounce that right?
Actually, it's Sian Winship, but I answer to anything.
Okay. So thanks to both of you for being here. And I believe you're going to do a PowerPoint presentation. So Greg, are we able to let them share their screen?
Sure, I've turned off my stream so we can preserve our meeting. So perfect. Let me hand it over to you right now. You should be able to grab it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. This is Kari Fowler. I'm going to start us off here, and then I will pass it along to my colleague, Sian. Let's see. Let me go ahead and share my screen. 1 second. Sec. Okay, so let me know when you can see my PowerPoint presentation.
Not yet.
Are you seeing it now?
Not yet.
Let's see here.
Technology.
Yeah, on mine it's showing that I'm sharing.
Are you, Greg, are you allowing her to share? Or what's the deal here?
Yep, very much so. Multiple participants can share simultaneously. So
Let's try it one more time. Is it showing now?
No.
you're not good.
Kari, do you want me to give it a try?
Yeah,
and
if you
I
can try
adv-
to do it on your end.
who knows if it'll be any different or better here. So hang on.
Oh,
one
here, let me
second.
try.
Whoa. Now we see Kari's now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, do you see it now? Okay, great.
All right. Well, see, it
Sorry
just
about
took
that.
me meddling. That's all it was. So
I was getting a weird kind of on and off thing. It might have been my internet connection. Okay, but you've got my screen now, so that's what matters.
yes.
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for your patience. Again, my name is Kari Fowler. I am a senior preservation planner at Historic Resources Group. My colleague Sian Winship will be speaking momentarily. We are a historic preservation consulting firm out of Pasadena, or actually out of our respective living rooms and dining rooms, more accurately. And we have been working on this survey project really since the early days of COVID. And even though we're still kind of plugging away on it, it's a very large project. but we have managed to keep going throughout all the trials and tribulations of COVID. And I know the planning department has had a shift in priorities over this time. And so we're happy that the survey is moving forward. And so we're happy to be here to give you some just some basic information and background about what the project is, what it involves, and where we are in the process. So I'll give you a quick project overview. We'll talk about the purpose of this survey. Obviously, this is not the first historic survey that you've had in your city, but this survey is different in a number of ways, and so we'll point that out to you. The main component of the survey that we've completed thus far is the historic context statement, and so Sian will talk about that in a little bit of detail. And then again, project progress, where we are in this overall process. And then I will give you a quick overview of the field survey component of the project that we're in the midst of. And then finally, we'll talk about next steps and how we're going to move forward. So project purpose, as some of you may be aware, a number of historic resources surveys have been conducted in Ventura previously, but this is the first time that the city has commissioned a city-wide survey. So we are literally looking at every single property within the boundaries of the city, and this is the first time that this has happened in Ventura. Up to this point, the downtown area has been surveyed multiple times. The avenue has been surveyed. There's one other area I'm blanking on right now, but I have it in an upcoming slide that has been surveyed previously. And the greatest benefit you can get out of a survey is when you really know about everything that you have across the city, so that when you're looking at a property and trying to determine, is that potentially historic, you have an idea of what else is out there in the city, what still exists, what levels of integrity are still out there. It's really hard to make those calls when you only know about certain neighborhoods, certain parts of town. So that's a great benefit that this survey will provide. As part of that, the survey will really help the planning department to streamline their review process. As it is right now, every time they are asked to pull a permit for a property over 40 years of age, they need to determine whether or not there should be some sort of historic assessment for that property. And it's really hard to kind of understand a property in isolation like that. So with a survey, you have kind of a baseline of information, again, like I say, across the city in all different neighborhoods. And that really becomes kind of a baseline from which you can evaluate the potential significance of one building in isolation. And so we're hoping that that process will streamline, and that will also provide some certainty for property owners going forward about whether their property might be historic or not. And the last thing I'll mention is that this the project was originally scheduled to dovetail with the general plan update. Because of the various things that have gone on in the last couple of years, I don't know exactly where we are in that process, whether we're lining up exactly, but in any case, we're moving forward with the survey, and then those survey findings, when they become finalized and adopted by the city, they can be used by the folks updating the general plan, so that as they make their recommendations for planning for the future, they can be mindful of properties that have been identified as potentially historic. So quick project overview, kind of the components of the project itself. It's basically a two-phased project, the historic context and the survey update. The historic context is the part that we are mostly complete with, and Sian will talk about that. Just to explain what a historic context is, it's basically a very long, detailed, illustrated narrative that tries to explain the built environment that you have today and how it got to be that way. So we're not focused solely on things that are not around anymore. We really try to use that history and illuminate what does that say about what you have today, because of course the goal is really about preserving what is still remaining today. The period of study is through 1979. In preservation, we often use a 50-year cutoff. This isn't exactly 50 years, but by the time things get adopted, that's generally what we're looking at, and is in the range of 50 years. I mentioned we have previous surveys in Ventura, and so we have been looking at all of that previous survey data and compiling that information and including it into our own findings. Identifying areas of additional research in this particular case, with a great emphasis on the post-World War II period. That was a specific request of the city when they commissioned this survey, as they felt like there were older parts of the city. They kind of had more of a grasp of what they had in those earlier periods, but they didn't know a whole lot about the post-war period, the immediate post-war of, the 40s through the early 60s, mid 60s. And that is particularly relevant in Midtown. I would say in College as well, those planning communities where so much of the development that's there today is from those periods. And then, of course, the historic context is citywide, and that is in contrast, or it is actually the same as the Phase 2 survey update, which is also citywide. So we are out there looking at all of the planning communities. And when I say looking, I mean a group of us in a car driving up and down every single street and laying our eyeballs on every single parcel. So you can imagine what an enormous task that is and why it takes a while for us to get through it. But it's absolutely essential and very worthwhile to get a real sense of a community, a neighborhood, and ultimately a city when you really have to look at every single street and see what's out there today. So that's the Phase 2, which is the part that we'll be doing next. We've completed the reconnaissance phase of that, which is the driving around aspect that I just described. And then the upcoming part is more about documentation of actually photographing and documenting those buildings on documentation forms. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But here we are. I just wanted to reiterate the previous studies that you have had done in Ventura. As I mentioned, downtown and the avenue. There was another survey update of the downtown specific plan area in 2007. And then the area I couldn't remember before was the west side area, has a historic context and survey of that area on its own. And just to let you know how we are thinking of the lay of the land here, this is a map that was provided by the city that breaks down the entire city into these planning communities. And as you're well aware, because Midtown and I would also say College, because they're right outside of downtown, as the city was expanding eastward in those post-war years, that's where we're finding a lot of these post-war resources. So it's been quite interesting. So I will go ahead and hand it off to my colleague, Sian, who has been working on the context statement. Go ahead, Sian.
Well, thanks, Kari. It's great to be with you guys tonight. Thanks for having us. As Kari mentioned, I'm the primary author of the context statement, which is, as she said, sort of, an overall history of the built environment. And if we haven't set it up until this point, I want to sort of stress the be in built environment. It's not meant to be a history of everything in Ventura. It's not everything everywhere all the time. We really try to focus in on what was built, what the patterns of development were, what those mean for existing resources today, and how it really explains the individual nature that makes Ventura special and unique. But we have to have a framework for doing that. And so, as you can see, this is kind of an outline for how we do that. It follows some general patterns in Southern California, but we do customize it for the individual communities. So, of course, we start with the Native Americans. We go through the Mission era, which, of course, in Ventura is exceptionally important, all the way through the establishment of the city and the early growth of the city, and then areas of sort of city expansion and improvement in the early teens, that period between the wars, World War II. And then what we like to call post-World War II prosperity, which was certainly the case in Ventura, and also the case, as you all know, in Midtown and in College. So to really understand what that meant and what the patterns of development were there. And then you can see we kind of move our way through expansion and redevelopment, the coming of the freeways, all that kind of good stuff in the 60s and 70s. And then at the end of the document, we have an overview of various ethnic and cultural contexts that are important for the city. So everything from Basques to African Americans to Latinos, Japanese, Chinese, Filipinos, etc. And for each of these individual areas where it's appropriate, we look at themes. So for example, let's say we're talking about the post-World War II prosperity area. We have sub-themes there where we look specifically at institutional development or commercial development or residential development or industrial development. We do that for each one of these periods. We don't do that for the mission era for obvious reasons, but for some of these more, urban, more 20th century periods, we go through each of those specific areas and try to, again, understand the broad patterns as well as the, some of the specific important resources that are involved in that. Next slide, please, Kari. So we've basically completed a revised draft of that, and it's on the project website, which is historicventura.com. As you can imagine, during COVID, it was really challenged. We had trouble getting into archives when everything was closed, but fortunately that has now lifted. And we've augmented the online resources that we were able to use with visits to the museum. We've met with individual, experts such as Charles Johnson, who many of you may know, or Cynthia Thompson, et cetera, the San Buenaventura Conservancy. And this whole purpose of this is information gathering, because we don't live in the community, and it's important to hear from the community, which is part of the reason we're here tonight, about things that are important. And so, that's another layer of, in addition to utilizing local archives, we want to hear from individuals. And so we've had one round. The reason it's a revised draft is we had one round of comments from the committee members, and we've addressed that. And we are also now adding new information in, and we'll also add in some more graphics, which is just one of those things you kind of do at the end, because otherwise it's a pagination nightmare. So what I would encourage all of you, part of the reason that we're here meeting with the members of your community, is we need to hear from you. If you would like to go and read this document on the website, we would love it for you to say, gosh, we think you've missed something here, or here's something important in my neighborhood that I think you might need to be aware of but might not know about. A great example of that from actually the Midtown area was that at one point, a local identified the fact that there was a development of Palmer and Kreisel homes, very small, but nonetheless of Palmer and Kreisel homes up in the hills of Midtown. And we didn't know about that. And it was great. I must say, I was moderately embarrassed I didn't know about it, because I did my thesis on Palmer and Kreisel. But that just shows you how important it is to hear from the community. And so we encourage you, no matter how small a thing it is or how large it is, please share it with us. And there are ways to do that Kari will talk about at the end of the presentation. So that's kind of the written part of the assignment. And Kari, why don't you take it back and talk a little bit more about where we're at and what we're doing going forward.
Okay, sorry, I'll just let me interrupt here. I know I see in the chat that the comment that some people are saying they aren't being admitted by Zoom, but I know Greg has been watching for folks, but I just wanted to say that Greg has been letting in anybody that has appeared.
I sent him a direct text as well.
So thanks, take it away.
Sure. Thank you. So yeah, thank you, Sian. And excuse me. So just to reiterate a couple of things that Sian said that are important for folks to keep in mind. One is that the context is on the website. That project website, historicventura.com, is live now. So anybody can go there and see that draft of the historic context statement. And as we say, it's a complete revised draft. It's complete in the sense that we don't feel like there are any big holes there, but it's a draft in the sense that we're always open to hearing about new information. We're always open to getting feedback or comments, or you missed this, or what about that? There's plenty of opportunity for all of that kind of feedback. So we very much welcome that. And there is actually a portal on the website where you can provide feedback there directly. So you can, go on there and fill out a form and tell us about some favorite building you have. If you don't want to read the 200-page document, you just want to tell us about your favorite stuff, that's fine too. So whatever works for you guys. As I mentioned, the field reconnaissance has been completed. So that's the part of the survey where we're driving up and down every single street. And what we do with that is we are developing a preliminary list of properties that we think could be historic, either individually or areas or groupings of properties that we think might be eligible as a historic district. And then once we have those lists, and because this is a citywide survey, we compile those lists by planning community. So we have a separate list for College, for West Side, for Midtown, for each area. And then we do a bunch of follow-up research, property-specific research, and that process we're fairly deep into, maybe getting close to wrapping that up. And that's looking at historic maps, historic photos, published sources, reconciling previous survey data, historic articles, newspaper articles, all that kind of information that we review to try to get a picture of these specific properties that we saw in the field. So that's kind of where we are in the process. Phase 2, which we will be launching momentarily, is about taking those property lists and all of that follow-up research and whittling that down to the properties that we really think are potentially historic and that we have enough information to defend that finding, and that we can kind of document and prove that up to a survey level, and then go back out into the field and do what we're calling field documentation, which is rather than going up and down every street, we're going specifically to those properties that we identified in phase 1 and documenting those properties by taking photographs, taking notes of their physical features, of their alterations over time. That's the phase that we have coming up. 2 important things to mention about that is that if you should see a team of 2 people standing outside documenting a building in the next number of months, that's probably us. And if you see us, we're very friendly. You're more than happy to come up and ask us what we're doing, and we'll be happy to kind of fill you in on what we're doing there. And just as importantly, that documentation is done from the public right-of-way. So we are not going on private property. We are not knocking on doors. We're not asking anybody for information. This is really about folks standing on the street and on the sidewalk, taking pictures and making notations about buildings that could be potentially historic and getting those documented for the city. I guess one last thing I will mention about that is a survey is not the same as nominating or designating a historic property. So the survey is really kind of the first step. When we identify a property in the survey, we're basically saying, hey, based on what we know about the history of this area, we think this property might be historic for reasons X, Y, and Z. And that's the information that we're presenting to the city in terms of forms and maps and context statements and lists. In order for a property to actually be designated or listed, whether locally, California Register, National Register, any of those, all of that is a completely separate process. It would require somebody to fill out a form, fill out an application. There's a public review process that goes with that. So lest anybody think that, being picked up on the survey is the equivalent of designation. Designation is a completely separate process. What the survey does do is it gives the city some baseline information so that when they're looking at a property and trying to determine, do we want to designate this, or on the alternative, do we want to allow an alteration to this, or do we want to give a demolition permit for this, whatever the process is that the city's looking at, that they have kind of a baseline of information to consider those questions. So that's what we're doing. As I said, we're always making revisions to our lists and our contexts. So we welcome any feedback anyone would like to provide. And then at the very end of the project, we give all of this information to the city. And once it's reviewed by the Historic Preservation Committee, the planning folks, and ultimately City Council, generally speaking, the survey is adopted by City Council and becomes kind of an official document that can be used by the city. So that's where we are. I know that's a lot of information to dump at you quickly, but we just wanted to give you that overview. And if you have any questions in the chat, well, we're happy to take those.
We do have a couple of questions. So Kate Faulkner asks, I look forward to reading the draft. Can you talk about the criteria for evaluating whether a neighborhood should be considered an historic district?
Good question. So generally speaking, when you're looking at a historic district, you're trying to identify a geographically definable area. So we're not talking about one property here and one property over there, and one property across town. We used to have districts like that called thematic districts, but we don't really have those anymore in historic preservation. It's really about a geographical area. So we're talking about an area that you can draw a boundary around and say the properties in this area have a shared history. They have something about their development that makes them relate to each other historically. They're different from the area right next door, which has a different history, and we can explain that. And also that you want to have a preponderance of intact properties, what we would call district contributors. So as we're looking at an area, we're looking at, how intact is each individual building to its historic period. And based on that, we'd identify the property as either a district contributor or a district non-contributor. And you want to have, a preponderance of properties being district contributors. So an example might be, a neighborhood, a residential area that is all single family homes. Everything was built in the 1920s and 30s. It's a range of period revival architectural styles, and the buildings are all fairly unaltered. So an area like that, we could say, okay, we can see that in the field. We can draw a line around that area and show how it's different from the areas to either side of it. We have a narrow period of development of 20s and 30s. That's something that they have in common. They represent these architectural styles that were from that period. And we see a lot of original historic features and not a lot of alterations. That would be an example of how, of how we might identify a historic district in the field. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so now it sounds like an expert question here from Laura Jesperson. Can't all buildings be historic, but you actually mean historically significant?
Well, yeah, I would say in historic preservation, when we say historic, that is what we mean, as opposed to historical, right? Which is anything in the past is historical. But yes, that's what we mean when we say historic, is historically significant. Not only is historically significant, which is the part where you say this is why this building might be important, or what association it has, or what story of history it tells, but it also has to have the integrity component, which means it retains kind of the physical features today that it would have had during that historic period. So having those two components being historically significant and having a historic integrity, that's what we're just using the shorthand. Historic, or more to the point, would be eligible for some sort of local listing or designation of some sort.
And Kari, I might just jump in and say that, significance can be because of its association with a certain pattern of development, or its association with a historic personage, or because of its architectural merit, or any number of different things. So there can, and it can be a both and, frankly, you could have two of those 3 or 4 things. So those are the things that are considered historically significant, not just because it's old.
Right, and that's a great point, Sian. And the Ventura criteria all spell that out very specifically. They talk about Is it significant for its association with the development pattern, or is it significant for its association with a person or with a group, or for its architectural merit, or as the work of an architect? So the local designation criteria, which are modeled on the California National Register criteria, which is what we use to do our evaluations, very much spell out those, all those different reasons why something might be historically significant.
Okay, thank you. And here, Greg Mansfield has a question. I heard there are some Sears catalog homes in Midtown. If that's the case, what's the typical style?
Oh, well, first of all, Greg, I will just say it's great to hear that. If you know more about exactly where they are, we would love to know that. There's certainly a whole period of kit homes that were popular at the turn of the century through the 20s and to a certain degree the 30s. And they can be a variety. There were Pacific Ready Cut homes that was a local purveyor. There were Sears homes, like you were saying, that could be mail ordered for. So that is definitely an interesting pattern, and we'd like to know more. So if you can provide more for us on details of what streets or generally what area, that would be great for us to know.
Okay, and here we have Eric Berg asking, are there any considerations for historic landscapes, parks, streets, etc., or is it just buildings?
There is consideration for landscapes. That's a great question. Generally, we are talking about designed landscapes as opposed to natural landscapes. We're not talking about, just natural hillsides or natural features like that. But if we're talking about a design landscape like a garden or a courtyard or a park, sometimes trees are identified as historically significant. You've got some great fig trees, some enormous Morton Bay fig trees in the city, several of which have been identified as historic. Sometimes a grouping of street trees is identified as being part of a development pattern of a particular street. When you're in more agricultural parts of the city, you sometimes see these windrows, these kinds of rows of eucalyptus trees that might be a remnant of a kind of a windbreak, that kind of thing. So all of those things could be. It depends on what we know about them and how old they are and what we can find out. But certainly the city's criteria allows for that and takes that into consideration.
Okay, so we prefer the questions to be in chat, but Dan has his hand up, so I'm gonna give you a pass here.
Thank you. And I just wanted to answer to Greg. There's a lot of the craftsman type style Sears kit houses peppered around Santa Clara neighborhood, quite a bit more on this upper end coming out of downtown.
Okay.
And there's just quite a few. I know Cynthia Thompson knows where a lot of those are.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, and I think you've probably answered this question, but what about, because this isn't really part of the built environment, but what about the Shumash history? Is there any way to recognize that as part of the study?
So we talk about that as kind of background information in the historic context, but that's not part of the scope of this particular survey project. There was some discussion at the city when they were developing the scope of the project, whether or not there would be an archaeological component, which is really, we're not archaeologists, that's not our area of expertise. And so if there were an archaeological component or prehistory component to the survey, we would want to have folks that are experts in that on our team. And when the city was scoping out the project, they opted not to do that. It's certainly a worthwhile exercise. I would encourage the city, and we have encouraged the city, if not part of this project, that they have a dedicated study of that period of time. Obviously, there's a lot of important history, prehistory in the city, and that would be definitely worth identifying in documentation, but it's not part of the scope of this project.
Okay, and another question for me is, I'm interested in how these neighborhoods, especially after World War II, developed in a segregated manner. Is that something that gets looked at?
And when you say a segregated manner, are you talking about deed restrictions and that kind of thing, or some other form of
Could
segregation.
it could include deed restrictions or just how our neighborhoods developed in a segregated way.
Well, we talk about that quite extensively. There is a marvelous book by an author to whom I'm in great debt, although I know he's passed away, called Streets of Ventura County, who basically did a lot of my job for me, which was he basically traced every single one of the tracks in all of the city of Ventura. And so we've used that information to describe the history of specific tracks and to understand more about sort of their deed restrictions and how they fit into those broader patterns. So the answer is yes.
Okay, well, thank you. And I guess we're going to ask Dan again to speak to another group that's involved in historic preservation, and that's the San Buenaventura Conservancy, of which he is on the board. So are you ready to say a few words, Dan?
Yes, and thank you. And I know Stephen Schaefer, who's president of San Buenaventura Conservancy, I'm vice president. He was at the College Community Council when you did your presentation, and he asked me to sit in for him tonight. He's up in San Francisco. And he just wanted me to, as you talked about in your presentation, how the San Buenaventura Conservancy worked with you. And he wanted me to let you know about a couple of things. One, our mission statements. The Conservancy works to increase public awareness of irreplaceable historic places and cultural sites, to disseminate information useful in the preservation of structures and neighborhoods, to prevent needless demolition, to champion adaptive reuse, and promote the preservation and enhancement of historic and cultural resources in Ventura. And that we have a Facebook page, an Instagram feed, of which I'm never on, and our website is sanbuenaventuraconservancy.org. I will tell you that the website is down right now. I tried to go on yesterday, and we're trying to get it fixed. Something's going on, but we'll get it back up soon. There's lots of photos on there all over Ventura and other places, and it's a great place just to go and look. And I would also add, in watching the historic, not the Historic Preservation Committee, but the Planning Commission meeting last night, they talked about state density bonus. And one thing that came up was historic structures that might influence where they might be able to do that or not. A case has not come up according to the attorney that presented that last night, but it was just something new and it was interesting. I also want to mention that the Pierpont Inn was at the Historic Preservation Committee in February, and they continued that meeting until April 20th, which now has been canceled. But the new owners of the Pierpont Inn, one of our most prestigious craftsman historic buildings in Midtown, want to do a property right remake of the place. And while some of the treatments they propose maintain and even bring back some historic finishes on the 1950s and 60s and 70s buildings, they want to further gut and redo the main craftsman building with composite all wood shingles and fixed vinyl soundproof windows, where the original windows are on the second story. The tiny original guest homes above the lobby, of which we toured a few years ago, have been untouched since it was built. And accounting staff never upgraded it. And some of those rooms they're looking to change around and take out the wavy glass window. Anyway, so that's something on our radar, and Shafe and I are trying to plan a meeting to talk with them soon to try to keep them going in the right direction. The company name is, where is it at here? Three Thrones Hospitality. They have one other project down in Marietta, I believe. And then we've got some really exciting things coming up. The California Preservation Foundation's 2023 Doors Open California event, the largest statewide celebration of historic places in California, in September 9th and 10th of this year, all across the state. There will be historic tours and such all over. We're looking to maybe do an Ash Street tour, and we're looking for volunteers and docents, as well as a soft opening of the new Elks, what was the Elks Lodge, now Boutique Hotel, and that should be in a few months. So just wanted to throw that out there, but really of concern is what's going on at the Pierpont Inn. It was kind of it was red tagged after the previous owners did a lot of damage to it. And we're hoping that these new owners do the right thing and take care of that historic building, which is on the National Register. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thanks to Kari and Sian, and really packed full of information. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for making time for us.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Being environmentally sustainable has always been really important in Midtown. And it's one of the vision things that we've talked about a lot, addressing climate change, et cetera. And we have a couple of speakers who are going to tell us how we can kind of do our part and make our homes all electric. So we have two speakers, Wayne Morgan and Marisa Hanson-Lopez. Marisa is with 3C REN, the Tri-Counties Regional Energy Alliance. And I know you've coordinated your presentation, so I'm not sure who's up first. So
I am.
Okay. Hi, Wayne.
Hi. So can I share my screen?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
It may take,
Sure,
Maybe-
hang on just a second. Wayne, let me let the bots do their thing. So give it a shot. Hopefully you should be able to take it now. Got
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Okay,
Got it?
good.
Okay,
yes, looks good.
excellent. Let me center that a little bit. So what you're seeing here is let's see, how can I get this better? What you're seeing here is a gold medallion that you might see near all electric homes that were built in the 50s and 60s. And when a friend of mine got word that I electrified my home, he went out and bought one of these on the internet and presented it to me. So tonight I'm going to tell you how I electrified my house. Here. Why electrify? Well, these are some of the factors that I took into consideration. For me, the environment was probably the most important. The latest IPCC report that was just released this last month said we really need to drastically reduce our burning of fossil fuels in order to limit the climate disruption. And going all electric is one way we can help to eliminate trapping gases, especially carbon dioxide and methane. This is a chart that shows the heat trapping gases emissions in Ventura City. Transportation is the main source, followed by residential natural gas. By going electric, we will be helping the city meet its climate goals. Health is another concern. From various studies, including the American Public Health Association and UCLA, burning gas in your home exposes you to health risks due to carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, natural gas impurities from leaking connections and appliances, and other combustion products. As far as energy independence and reliability, I became more independent and reduced my energy costs with solar panels. I have batteries, and you get backup power in case of a blackout with batteries. Also, batteries allow you to avoid peak electric costs by powering your home when the electric rates are high. You do need a battery to be able to harvest your solar energy if you do have a blackout. As an aside, presently, I don't believe you're allowed to charge your battery with grid power and then use it to power your home or sell it back to the utility. I really hope this changes because this is what the utilities will be doing. you get savings. Actually, it's a good investment to have solar and batteries. As far as investment, the California Public Utilities Commission, or the CPUC, states with the latest solar compensation program called Net Metering 3 or NEM 3, a system with solar and batteries should have a payback of around 10 years. After the 10 years, your energy is virtually free. What will the electric future look like? Sources will be solar, wind, geothermal, hydro, nuclear. Right now, wind and solar are cheaper than fossil fuels. Some fossil fuel plants are being shut down because it's less expensive to replace them with renewables than it is to keep fueling them and maintaining them. The traditional model of centralized energy sources will give ground to distributed energy resources like solar, wind, and local solar, which includes residential solar. The grid will have storage with batteries, pumped hydro, compressed air, hydrogen, and thermal. Grid storage makes the grid more efficient and responsive and gives us power when the wind and sun aren't shining. Some other things we'll see are microgrids, which are small communities that share generating resources and loads. They're usually self-sufficient, but they connect to the grid anyway. And smart grid, we're going to see a lot of control devices on the grid. The grid will be talking with loads that you have in your house and help to lower the or levelize the loads on the grid. We'll also see distributed energy resources grouped to form a virtual power plant. So grouping a bunch of these distributed resources, you can control them to actually look like another power plant. What does my all-electric home have? Well, it's got solar panels, batteries, and it's got these appliances, all electric appliances now. So these are the appliances that I have installed and the prices. Now these prices don't include any incentives. So we'll get into more details of what these appliances actually are in a second. But before taking a closer look at these appliances, some of you may be wondering what a heat pump is. You've heard a lot of talk about heat pumps. Well, refrigerators and air conditioners are basically heat pumps. For space heating, instead of using it as an air conditioner, you reverse the function and you heat up the room and you cool the outside air. So the switching of these modes is done with valves in the units. So you're taking heat from one place and moving it to another place. The energy it takes to do that is less than the energy it would take to raise the temperature using energy directly. So there's a ratio called the coefficient of performance, which gives you the relationship between how much energy you put into a heat pump and how much energy you get out. And so the energy you put into the heat pump is typically for residential units about 2.5 to 4 times more heat than you would get from just heating the room with the, say, an electric heater that you plug into the wall. And some of the measures of efficiency for heat pumps include these ratios here. I'm not going to go into all of them, but the higher the number, the better, the more efficient they are. And another thing about space heating heat pumps in your home, you get air conditioning also. So when you upgrade your gas furnace, you get air conditioning too. And this is what my heat pump looks like. It's 2 units. I have 1 unit outside the garage, and this unit just slips right into where the old gas furnace went. It was a pretty easy install. I did need some new power to go out to the to both units, 240 circuits, but the installers did that wiring for me, so that was a savings right there. And when I put in the solar panels, I made sure that I had a breaker panel and slots available for expansion. So I did have slots for 4 double pole breakers in the breaker panel, and it was a pretty easy install after that. Let's move on to water heaters. These are some of the types of water heaters that are green, solar. You can use solar directly or to preheat water before your water heater. There are electric tankless water heaters. They're relatively inexpensive, but they take an awful lot of power. You need usually 2 lines of 240 power to go to them. Some of them take up over 100 amps. So you really have to have a big service loop drop going into your house to use a tankless electric. But they do last a long time, and they serve the job. Then there's just the standard electric water heater, and then there's also a heat pump water heater. Now the heat pump is going to be 3 to 4 times more energy efficient than the electric one. And this is what my heat pump water heater looks like with cross section of it. There's a fan up here, and it draws in air from the room, and it then directs it through the evaporator, which cools the air. So the room that this water heater is in will cool the room. I'm lucky I have it in the garage, so it actually cools my garage down. It's nice in the summertime. My water heater is called a hybrid. It has also electric elements that are used to kick in when you have a high demand, so that you get hot water quicker. And now they've come out with 120 volt heat pump water heaters. So these are designed to just pop right in, replacing a gas water heater, but you can plug it into the wall. You don't need special wiring. So I was really excited about this. And that kind of reminds me of a joke I heard one of my favorite comedians say, who is an engineer, and he is often played at the Ventura Harbor Comedy Club. He said that engineers aren't boring, they just get excited about boring things. And in this case, I think I'm guilty of that, because this to me is, if I had known this was on the market, I would have installed this one instead of the one that I did. And here's a tip. I noticed that my water heater was taking more energy than I thought it should. So I did something similar to what is shown here. You make what they call an anti-thermal siphon. It really keeps the convection currents from going up into wherever that hot water goes, and it really saves energy. It cut my energy usage by about 2.5 kilowatt hours per day, which is about half of my daily use. So that was pretty good. Let's move on to ranges. You have the traditional coil element electric range. You have the radiant heat electric range, and now the induction electric range. The coil is the old-fashioned kind, and they're kind of dirty, and they get hot, and they're hard to clean. The radiant is got a flat surface. It's a ceramic, like glass surface. It's relatively easy to clean. It does get hot though when you use it, because the elements underneath of it are are just really red hot to transfer the heat with infrared to the pot or pan. So sometimes to clean those, you have to use a razor to scrape it. But I like those better than the coil. But I like the induction best of all. And this is the induction range that I installed. It was a drop-in replacement for the gas. I mean, it fit right in there. And I was lucky. I already had the wiring for an electric range. So it was an easy install. I just pulled it out and put this new one in. And I really like these induction stoves because they're safer. The top of the surface, which is like glass, it only gets hot because the pan sits on it. So when the pan gets hot, it warms the glass. So that way they're safer. They won't operate unless you have the right kind of pan on them. They have to be magnetic cookware. So you do need special pots and pans. That's one thing. They are becoming more readily available though. I've seen them, and all you have to do is take a magnet and check it, or look on the bottom of it and it should say induction ready. The other thing, I can use the surface of the range as extra counter space. We have limited counter space, and I put stuff on the range without having to worry about it getting hot or getting a fire, because the burner won't light unless you have the right pan on there. So let's move on to dryers. I just replaced the electric gas dryer with electric dryer, and I was lucky again. In the garage, I had a plug that was set up for the electric dryer. You know, it's a dryer. They're lower cost than gas initially. There's lower maintenance on them. There are heat pump dryers out now. They're a little more expensive. Some of them don't require any venting, but I do hear they sometimes take longer to dry. And I've also heard of combo washers and dryers in one unit, which I hadn't heard of before, but evidently it washes your clothes and then dries it for you, and then tells you when it's ready. So it's something else if you're so inclined to look at it. So the other thing, you want to make sure you have an outlet installed in your garage or wherever you might want to charge your car, maybe just outside the garage or somewhere, to install a charger outlet. I would go for a 50 amp outlet. You can get by with a lower amperage, but the 50 amp might limit you for some future uses of EV chargers, which I'll get into in a minute. And what is my electric home missing right now? I don't have a bidirectional EV charger. Now, the bidirectional EV charger is a device that will charge your car, but it will also allow you to take energy power from your car and use it in your home. And this is going to become, I think I'm really excited about this, because this is the least expensive way to have storage in your home. Because if you have an electric car, you've got a huge battery on your electric car. Typically, the battery in your car is, probably 6 to 7 times larger than a battery that you would have for your home. So you've got a lot of capacity there. And in an emergency, you could drive your car to a place where you could charge up, come home and plug it in to keep your house going. So in emergencies, this would really be a great thing. And there's a bill right now in the California Senate, SB 233, that is going to require manufacturers to have the capability of doing this bidirectional charging. It's called vehicle to grid or vehicle to home. there's vehicle to lots of things, and they call it everything is vehicle to X. So anyway, that's coming. It's exciting, I think. And what else do we have? Oh, here's another tip. If you have an electric dryer outlet near where you might charge your car and you don't have a charger outlet nearby, you can buy a device that will share electricity between the dryer and the electric car. Now the dryer will get priority. So whenever the dryer switches on, it turns off your charging of your car, and then it'll switch it back when it's done. So the first time I was charging my electric cars, I was using the dryer outlet. I had a gas dryer and I just used that all the time. But once you get an electric dryer, you may not be able to do that. You can use one of these to do that. So that's another tip in the bag. Planning, you should probably try to plan to do as much as you all at once if you can. You know, if you can plot out what devices you want, where you want them. When you install your solar, that would be an ideal time because they have to go into the breaker box. So if you need a bigger breaker, that's the time to do it. Specify the location of those devices that you want. And you may even pre-wire some of those. Make sure you have the breakers, but you pre-wiring. There's a California possibly might ban the sale of furnaces and water heaters, gas water heaters, gas furnaces and gas water heaters as soon as 2030. So you don't want to get caught not having some wiring or outlet near those devices if they go bad. So yeah, is there anything else here? Oh, one other thing, just real quick on time of use plans. I hope everybody's looked at their time of use plans, but these are some typical use plans. Look at the way the charging, the rates jump up between, the late afternoon and early evening. So you want to avoid using large devices during that time. This is where the batteries really come in, because you'll be charging your batteries during the day, and then when it hits 4 p.m., use your battery to supply your house and reduce your bill in that manner. As far as the economics go, I use, with the house the way it is, with electric cars driving 16,000 miles a year, I use about 11,000 kilowatt hours per year. So you can run through some numbers here. I just took the least, the lowest electric rate, which was 26 cents per kilowatt hour, and that turns out to be $2,860 a year in savings just there. Now that doesn't really account for the fact that I'm also not using natural gas or gasoline in my car. So it's more, it's more like $4,000 a year in savings that I get. So anyway, I encourage people to take the plunge and help our planet survive, and maybe save some money in the meantime too. The one thing that I'd really like to see happen is more money available in low cost loans to cover some of these, because it's difficult to get that initial investment, but it pays for itself in less than 10 years. So if we could just get some kind of financing to finance the initial capital investment, everybody would be better off. So that's all I really have at this point. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. That was really interesting, maybe a little wonky, but I think a lot of us are going to be trying to figure this stuff out. We do have, let's see, a couple of questions. There may be sort of comments, but let's see, with 48% of the greenhouse gases coming from autos, is there a plan being worked out in our city so that there are a lot of electric charging stations This is from Cherie Egbert, really referring to with all new building of multi-unit housing, is the city requiring electric vehicle charging stations on the grounds? So I know that, I'll just jump in here, new housing at least requires the setup to be EV charging ready. Do you have any other information?
I don't have any information on the city. And I think it's a little, I think you only need to have a few charging stations in multifamily units. So I'd like to see that increased. What I think we're really going to need in the future, though, and this is especially for people who don't have the ability to charge at home or at work. I mean, the best thing would be to charge during the daytime, because that's when the solar is available. But if that's not possible for a lot of people, we should really have fast charging stations, just like gas stations, because a lot of these charging stations that they're talking about are relatively slow. You know, it may take 4 to 6 hours to charge your car. And I'm not going to, you know, after work, I'm not going to go somewhere and sit for 4 to 6 hours or leave my car for 4 to 6 hours to go to work the next day. So I think we need a lot more fast charging stations, especially in disadvantaged areas, you know, where people don't have charging at home.
And I think this question may be a setup for you. This is from Kate Faulkner. So many cities have banned gas appliances in new construction. Has this been discussed in Ventura?
Well, it certainly was discussed in the county because they did that. Yes, I have been discussing it with the city, but they haven't made the move yet. So, yeah.
I think it's likely that that will be part of the next code cycle. The latest one just went into effect in January of this year, but they update the code cycle every 3 years, and it's really likely that they'll ban gas in new construction in the next code cycle round.
Yeah, it's really too bad that you know, that's not, well, how should I put it? Right now, the code requires that you put electrical outlets for new construction. You need to put electrical outlets, even if you have a gas appliance there. So, I mean, that's a duplication of resources, you know, and eventually, yeah. Anyway, to me, the economics doesn't make sense to go with gas appliances at this point.
Okay, we've got quite a few thank you Waynes in the chat. And also all items, a question from Bobby Grantham, all items have to be replaced at some point in time. What is the plan for recycling the large batteries and solar panels as well as the EV batteries? These items are not environmentally friendly to dispose of. I don't know if you have an answer to that one either.
Well, one of the founders of Tesla, J.D. Strober, or J.B. Anyway, Strobel, is starting a large recycling plant in Nevada. So, I mean, these batteries are worth money. And also, when they're not good enough to use in EVs, a lot of times they'll be useful for stationary sources like battery backups for grid storage or even home storage. The requirements for EV batteries is they have to supply a lot of power, and your home doesn't really require nearly as much surge power as EVs. So they'll be repurposed before they get recycled. And battery life now, Tesla has batteries that they say are going to last 1 million years. I mean, not 1 million years, a million miles, sorry. So, you know, you'll be able to recycle those batteries over and over. And yeah, so as far as solar panels, I don't know what kind of activity is going on in solar panels, but you know, if you look at how much energy a solar panel will generate over time, and compare that to what volume of petroleum products, that would be, it's pretty amazing. It's like tons of coal for one solar panel worth of electricity that you generate. So, we're kind of, let's not have perfect be the enemy of good.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much. And again, a lot of thanks coming in the chat. So our next speaker is on a related topic, and Marisa Hanson-Lopez, thank you for being here. And she's already been putting some answers into the chat so take it away.
All right, thank you. I'm also going to share my screen. Everybody seeing that?
Yep, you got it. Okay, perfect.
All right. So yeah, thank you for having me tonight. My name is Marisa Hanson-Lopez. I work for the County of Santa Barbara, and I work on 3C Ren's home energy savings programs, which I'll be talking about tonight. So Wayne kind of talked about the different types of ways you can electrify your home, different opportunities there. I'm going to talk about the different rebates and incentives that are available to making those electrification upgrades to your home a lot more affordable. Before I jump into that, though, I just want to provide a little bit of an overview of 3C Ren for those who are not familiar. The Tri-County Regional Energy Network, or 3C Ren, is a collaborative partnership between the counties of San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura, and it was established to deliver energy-saving programs and building industry trainings that help reduce energy use in buildings, help strengthen local job markets, and support efforts to achieve local climate goals. We're funded by ratepayers through the Public Benefits Fund. So everybody who pays a utility bill every month pays into this fund, and 3C Ren brings some of those funds back to benefit the Tri-County region through the programs that we offer. So currently 3C Ren administers 3 different programs. We've got Energy Code Connect program that serves building professionals by offering Title 24 support over the phone, in the field, and online. We also have the Building Performance Training program that serves building professionals with technical and soft skills trainings relating to building science principles and marketing techniques. And then finally, we have the Home Energy Savings programs. We've got 2 different tracks for that. One serves single-family homeowners and one that serves multifamily properties. So like I said, we heard Wayne speak to the types of electrification upgrades that you can make in your home. And now I'll dive into the different programs that can help make those upgrades more affordable. So right now, and definitely for the foreseeable future, there is quite a bit of money at the local and state and now federal level to help homeowners make that electrification transition. There are quite a few programs out there, and it can be a little confusing to navigate, but 3C Ren can certainly help you figure out what all's available to you. And what's also really great is that a lot of the different incentives and rebates that are available can be stacked and layered together to really bring down the cost of a project. So the first one I'm going to talk about is our program. It's 3C Ren's Single Family Home Energy Savings Program. And this program offers homeowners competitive or discounted pricing for energy efficiency and electrification upgrades by working with contractors who are enrolled in our program. There's especially discounted pricing for customers who qualify as hard to reach. So in the Ventura area, that means you'd be living in a designated disadvantaged community and either qualify for discounted utility rates, live in a mobile home, or primarily speak a language other than English. And then the way that our program works is that the rebates are tied to actual energy saved. So the more energy a project saves, the higher the rebate is. That rebate gets paid directly to the contractor, and 3C Ren encourages contractors to pass most of that on to the customer. I would definitely encourage you, if you are pursuing a project through our program, to negotiate that with your contractor up front. And then again, so since rebates are tied to performance, 3C Ren customers can expect quality work from their contractors. The eligibility to participate in the 3C Ren single family program is pretty simple. You just have to be a single family homeowner, and that does include mobile and manufactured homes, live within the 3C Ren service territory. So like I said, we offer services throughout 3 counties, and then receive utility service from an IOU, so SoCal Gas, SoCal Edison, or a community choice aggregator. So in this area, it would be Clean Power Authority or Alliance. And then you also need to have lived in your home for at least 12 months and not have installed solar within the past 12 months. Okay. So to get started with our program, you can go to our website. It's 3c-ren.org. And there's a for residents page. You have two options. You can either fill out the interest form and let us know what upgrades you're interested in or think you're interested in. And we can send your information to and make an introduction to several contractors who can help you. Or you can search for an enrolled contractor and reach out to them directly. One other option would be if you're working with a contractor who's not enrolled, but you want to work with that contractor, definitely send them our way. We would love to get them enrolled so they are helping their customers save money. Once you've selected your contractor, finished your scope of work, you'll complete your project. And then just remember, negotiate that rebate up front in advance for yourself. This is just an example of what our contractor page looks like. So you can filter for your location, what types of upgrades you're interested in, those types of things. And it'll give you a list of the contractors that can serve you for what you're looking for and where you're located. We're constantly trying to recruit new contractors. So if there's one that you, again, want to work with that isn't on our list, please tell them about us. We'd love to get them signed up. The next program that I'm going to talk about is called Tech Clean California. So this program offers rebates specifically for heat pump technology, so heat pump HVAC systems or heat pump water heaters. They offer $3,100 in rebates for heat pump water heaters in Ventura and $1,000 for rebates for heat pump HVAC units. These rebates are also paid directly to contractors and then passed directly onto the customer as either an upfront discount or a post-install rebate. And these rebates can be layered on top of 3C Ren rebates. So similar to 3C Ren, you'll need to work with a tech contractor to participate in the tech program. You can find a participating contractor on at switcheson.org. Or if you're working with a contractor that isn't enrolled, again, ask them to sign up. It's a really easy process, and they can also do that at switcheson.org. Once you've selected a participating contractor or gotten your preferred contractor to enroll, you'll complete your project and that rebate will be paid to them and passed directly on to you. Finally, some of you probably heard about or very familiar with the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed last year. So part of that bill included tax credits for home energy efficiency and electrification upgrades. So you can get a 30% tax credit on the cost of energy efficiency improvements like heat pumps, heat pump water heaters. Those both have a limit of $2,000 per year. There are also tax credits available for weatherization upgrades, and that would include things like insulation, air sealing, doors, windows, and energy audits. And that has a limit of $1,200 per year. And then there are also tax credits available for electrical panel upgrades with a limit of $600 a year. So Wayne mentioned some of the electrification upgrades might require some electrical panel work. Again, there are rebates and incentives to help with that cost as well. There are also other tax credits included in the Inflation Reduction Act that you can claim for electric vehicles, electric vehicle chargers, solar and battery storage. And there will be additional rebates available later this year, but those details are still TBD, so I don't have those now, but they are on the horizon. I would just recommend working with a tax professional if you do these upgrades and want to claim these savings, just making sure that you're getting everything that you do qualify for. So again, all of these programs can be applied to your project to get maximum savings. So the key is to make sure that the contractors that you're working with are enrolled in these programs. We really try to work as 3C Ren with tech and any other programs that do have rebates and incentives to make sure that contractors are enrolled in all of them. So if you pick one, you get all of them. That's kind of a continuous process though. Again, if they're not enrolled, ask them to apply. And if they need help with that, please send them our way. We're definitely happy to help. Let's see. Oh yeah, just a couple examples so you can kind of get a sense of how much these rebates can contribute to the overall cost of a project. So this first example is for replacing a natural gas furnace with a heat pump. That green horizontal line is kind of the estimated replacement cost for installing a heat pump furnace, and it's about $12,000. The bar on the left shows the estimated savings by stacking all three of the programs that I talked about today, which would reduce your project cost by $5,000 and bring the overall cost of your project down to $7,000. Now, the bar on the right shows estimated rebates for if you qualify as a hard to reach customer. So you can see that that total estimated rebate covers 100% of the project cost, and that does and has happened. So it certainly is a possibility. Similarly, this example is for replacing a natural gas water heater with a heat pump water heater. Again, stacking the rebates for a non-discounted utility rate or hard to reach customer adds up to about $7,100 for this project. And for a hard to reach customer, it's over $13,000, which would almost certainly cover 100% of the project cost. So this is really just to demonstrate that there are really significant resources available right now for making the switch to electric. If you're not quite ready to make big upgrades just yet, or maybe you're a renter, 3C Rent has also partnered with local libraries to offer DIY home energy savings toolkits. So these toolkits can be checked out, and they have a variety of supplies that you can keep and install in your house to start saving energy immediately. They include some LED light bulbs, a low flow shower head, some weather stripping, a water leak detection tablet, stuff like that. And then also some tools that you can use and then return with the kit when you're done, like an infrared thermometer and a kilowatt meter. We also actually just added induction cooktops. So Wayne mentioned his induction stove. You can check out a cooktop just to see how induction technology works and get a sense and a feel for it before making that plunge for buying a whole new appliance, if you're interested. So these are just links to some of the resources that I mentioned throughout my presentation. I'm happy to share these slides so folks can go back and reference these if you're interested. So I'll send those to the organizers after this. And then, because this is a lot of information and it can be quite confusing to navigate, we've got some contact information here. Feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to walk through any options, answer any questions you've got about any of this. And that's it for me, but I'm also happy to take any questions folks have.
Great. Well, there was a question, but I think you answered it. Greg Mansfield says, do you have a sense of what heat pump water heaters cost?
Yeah, I mean, they really, they can range. I would really recommend getting several quotes because those can vary pretty widely as well. But yeah, the estimate that we used was about, I mean, 13,000 would be on the high end for sure. The very high end, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much. This has been really informative, and I think a number of us were soaking it in, and we'll be following up. We'll distribute the PowerPoints. We can probably put a link in them to our next newsletter or something. Anyway, we'll get that information out. So thank you so much. Okay, we're going to run through a couple of quick reports because I know people are getting antsy probably. Eric, do you have a quick treasurer's report?
I do not this evening. Apologies.
Okay, so good. We'll do that next month. Loma Vista School, Cherie, can you give us a quick update? Is Cherie still here? There she is. Okay, well, Cherie must be out of the room. I will just say that we have a meeting scheduled with the Ventura Unified School District to talk about what's happening at Loma Vista School in terms of the fencing and opening how the school is going to be open to the public or not. So we'll be reporting back on that. Also, the Vista del Mar project that is being proposed, we wrote about it in the newsletter. We will be asking the developers to come and talk about it at a future meeting. This is a proposed project where the, I think it's Ventura Coastal Lemon Plant is south of the railroad tracks and east of Seaward. Major development being proposed there, and Midtown had submitted a letter to the city about some of the concerns we have. Those were also identified in the newsletter. And the city's working on an economic development plan. There's some opportunities for engagement coming up next week. City Community Council chairs are going to a meeting on Monday, and on Tuesday, there's an opportunity for some public engagement. And then also the general plan, the General Plan Advisory Committee is meeting on Tuesday, and they'll be looking at some areas including areas in Midtown like Five Points and the Pacific View Mall. I would just, if people have ideas for future meetings that you'd like to see, please put them in the chat or email me. And let's see, we have a comment about, I'm not sure what the comment means, but Amy Cherie is saying the deadline for KB Homes Coastal Amendment is May 12th. So watch what's happening with the city. Are there any general announcements that people have? If so, raise your hand. Okay, Mark. Mark?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I saw the comments that was sent to about KB Homes, and I think they were excellent. I just was wondering, was there a way that citizens, and I may have missed it, I was away on vacation, that other people, community members within Midtown could provide input to the board to that would be forwarded?
Well, I would suggest you make your comments directly. This is coming back. So this was, I'm sorry, I've forgotten the dates, but this was heard at City Council, and they asked the developer to work with the city to come up with a some kind of a I forget what the word is. Anyway, term sheet. Thank you. And this is coming back to the City Council on, I think, May 22nd. So there's, I just encourage people to send in their written comments.
Yeah. Okay. I would also recommend people to listen, if they have the time, that last part of that meeting that talks about KB Homes in the City Council meeting. It was a very interesting meeting. So there's a lot of good information that went back and forth, and if you could spend 25 half an hour or so, and on the City Council meeting on the 27th, where it was talked about the KB Homes project, you'd get a lot of information and insights into how the city and the developer are working together.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Bobby.
Hi, thank you, Karen. I just wanted to let everybody know that on Saturdays from 10 to 2, we are working with Food Share to help families who are food insecure. So if you know of anybody who would need a little bit of help to tie them over to their to the next day or next meal, then send them our way.
Okay, thank you. And Cherie.
Yes, I just wanted to make an announcement, and sorry, Karen, I walked away for just a minute toward the transition. I heard most of your report, but I wanted to make an announcement regarding on this Saturday from 9 to 12 at Loma Vista School. We're actually having a big garden work day where there will be more community people out there. It's been planned for a few months with Laura. We're going to be working the front of the native plant garden a little bit, but mostly in the back. We're going to pull the rest of the Bermuda grass out and mulch the orchard. So we really actually need help. Even if you can only come for 30 minutes, it's helpful. And just come see us in the back by the orchard. So I wanted to announce that. Hopefully some of you guys can come.
Okay, thank you. And Amy. Amy, you're up.
Sorry about that. I pressed the wrong button. My comment on the KB Homes deadline. So the agreement between the city and KB Homes, there's a state deadline for them to respond, and that is May 12th. And then the next city council meeting is the 22nd. So they're already going to come to a decision by May 12th. So if you can get your comments in before then, that would be great. And maybe, think about the intersection at Alessandro and Seaward as well, because that's going to become the major gridlock point, choke point. But thank you for talking about it tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And Marilyn. Marilyn, you're up.
Okay. My golden retriever is no longer with me, but I'm just checking to see if Loma Vista is going to be closed to dogs. She used to love to get her tennis ball coming down the slide at the playground. So is Loma Vista going to be locked off to dogs coming in?
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for hanging in there for this meeting. I think it was pretty long, but we had some really great information and some good feedback from folks. And again, if you have suggestions for things you'd like to see at future meetings, email me. And we'll see you around. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Very good.